before we get to the first question, I got a couple questions. I got one question, I guess. You had mentioned. So then, how do tour operators or hoteliers, anybody, stakeholders, work with you guys?
Yeah, I should have an answer to that because I think I set that up as a predicted question. You can't do this alone. Both of our presentations had these sort of three-pronged triangles to them. If you were to look at how Unsettled operates at the end of the day, we don't have an office. We don't own any property anywhere. What is it that we do? We fundamentally partner at every step along the way. We work with local co-working spaces. I said in my slides, or showed in my slides, there are 15 right up the street in Dubai. We work with local accommodations partners. Across the board, we're partnering. And so what I would do if I was, whether I was a destination marketing agency, whether I owned a hotel, I was a tour provider, is I would just sit down with the people, get the right people in the room, the people who own the co-working space, who are running the co-working space, the people who are marketing our destination, the people who have the big accommodations, and I'll just get them in the room and ask, is there anything we can do as a group, as a community to attract this traveler? Any unidimensional campaigns, they're gonna fail out there. They will not stand up on their own. You gotta get all the players together in the right space. Yeah, what would you add?
So, I've always thought, and I've always said to a lot of people, that if you're doing something big, it's best to do it with a bunch of people together, right? It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And it has to be done with the right set of partners in place. And for us, to be honest, we are in the business of building the community itself. And that means that to deliver the best local experience, to deliver the best logistics, to have hotels, apartments, co-working spaces, activity partners, it's always best to rely on people who are experienced in that, in a local area. So for us, the process is fairly simple. Either me personally or our director of operations, we would be the ones scouting a location. We'd be the one meeting the local partners to make sure that we are on the same level. If we understand each other on a more moral, ethical level, if we understand that authenticity and transparency are the values that we abide by, then we can be in business together. It's all about working out these basic fundamental criteria. And if we have the right set of people with us, if we've been able to build a community of travelers who understand the same thing that we talked about, and that they want to pursue this long form of travel, then it's fairly easy for us to work together on multiple parameters. We can always partner with all sorts of local logistics providers and destination management companies across the world in all sorts of interesting remote locations. So, yeah.
Okay, all right, let's go to some more questions here. So first question is, what are the main freelance occupation professions that participate in long tourism? And do you see any global corporations adopting this model in the future? Want to answer that?
Yeah, maybe we can both answer. I'll just speak anecdotally of who do we see on our trips. I think the number one sort of career background that we see is people who work in digital marketing. Digital marketing by nature is online. And so I think that's the number one sort of freelancing occupation that we see joining Unsettled. And I would say there's a second one that's happening. As more and more people are working freelance, it's not even about your occupation, it's about how often are you changing occupations. And again, US and Europe data, but it really applies globally. Every 4 years in the US, every 4 years, the average worker is changing careers, not jobs, an entire career field from one area to the next. And this is part of reinventing yourself. When you're out there working for yourself, you have to continually learn. And we find there's a lot of people who join our trips who are reinventing themselves. They need a structured sabbatical to step away, to rethink, and to continue to work or be around productive people. So I would offer those two.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what about you? I mean, what do you?
So I'll first share something interesting. We once had someone on our one of our programs, and this lady, she was an expert at mixing margaritas, and her freelance occupation was traveling around the world, learning new styles of mixing margaritas and offering them as a service to any bar that would pay her the requisite fee. And you can see that just opens up the horizon of all sorts of interesting things that could happen out there. So if I talk about mainstream occupations, you've got engineers, developers, digital marketing people, entrepreneurs with small to medium enterprises. You've got people who provide consulting services. You've also got remote CFOs. A bunch of people are CFOs, but working with a lot of different startups at the same time. You've got operations people who travel to different places and set up operations for their companies. And you've got people who are writing their books, authors who like Michael said, or a bunch of people who are on sabbatical. So there are all sorts of different types of people who are now purely working online. And some of them are really interesting and very niche. So we met a model who just goes to interesting locations, clicks pictures, and then sells them online to different stock image websites, and that's her income. So you will see a lot of interesting new careers come out. At the same time, you will see a lot of traditional careers and job roles going fully remote. So there's no limit to what you can see here. I believe in the next decade or so, almost 80% to 90% of the jobs will be able to, will be fully remote. You could be able to do these things online. And a big help towards that is this interesting software that I saw. It's called Doghead Simulation. And it just creates a virtual office environment for all your team. So if we've got 5 people in 5 different countries and time zones, we can all just log in, and through video, you will see an office space where all 5 are sitting together. So essentially, we are having a meeting on a daily basis. So there's a lot of scope that technology has to bring people together, even in a remote environment. So I don't think there's any dearth of occupation when it comes to that.
Well, I guess there's a second part of the question. I mean, you had mentioned WordPress, about the 600 employees.
Right.
So I mean, what are any other global corporations that are sort of following the same model?
Absolutely. So, you.
No, go ahead.
So a bunch of companies. Let me start with IBM. IBM has got a huge amount of people who are working remotely, close to 15, 20,000. I'm not sure if maybe even more. Cisco. So one of our customers, she was working with Cisco in Belgium for almost 7 years. She has never been to Belgium. She's from Ukraine. And she's been working completely remotely with them for 7 years. So Cisco, Accenture, IBM, Microsoft. So yesterday, or two days back, I talked to this person called Scott Hanselman. He's the author of very famous books on ASP.NET. He's been working with Microsoft for 10 years, never been to Seattle, never been to an office even once. So there are a bunch of global corporations who are allowing their employees to work remotely, either partially or completely. There are all sorts of companies who are doing that.
Yeah, and I think he's absolutely right. The only thing I would add is that small and medium employers are often overlooked. They're the largest employers in the world when you take them aggregately. How many people do they employ? And those are the ones that we see are very progressive. They don't have to break down 30, 40, 50 years of corporate policy to let people go out and work remotely. So we've seen a lot of teams with 20, 30, 40, 50 people go out there and be like, yes, you can work remotely. In some ways, it saves money for the business. In other ways, it gives greater freedom to their employees. And so we've often seen benefit packages. We've seen things around the holidays where it's, hey, you did great. You met your sales quotas. Here's a benefit for you to go out and try this next year.
All right. So let's go to the next question. Karma here. So this is from Michael. What's your answer when clients ask you about a trip with, what happened to the question?
I think I saw it. The value for money.
Yes, and then something about TMCs.
We're both going to have to answer this one.
I know. It's the most common question we get.
Yeah, and I love that you guys are transparent. I haven't thought about doing that, but I absolutely love it. The number one comment we get when we start a trip, our month-long trips, is that you're underpriced. Across the board, 90% of our clients come to us, you're underpriced. It doesn't mean they're all overwhelmingly off the roof satisfied with us, but across the board, you're underpriced. And our prices have been increasing. But that's fundamentally what is. And the tricky part here is, and we were talking a little bit about this last night at dinner, it's really, transformational travel is something we've talked about throughout the day today. It's really hard to describe that as value you're going to get, because as soon as you set the expectation, I'm going to change your life, you put up these barriers. You're no longer that hero in the hero's journey. You're outside of that journey, looking down on yourself. And so our value that we give is we actually step away, because we're not about the pieces of this. We're not about the hotel accommodation, the workspace. Sure, we communicate that. We make sure people have access to that Wi-Fi, but it's that shared experience. It's the fact that they're meeting 25 people from around the world, all different career paths that they're learning from, that they're going to go home. They're making big decisions when they get home. That's the real value, and we allow them to reach that conclusion on their own.
Right. Oh, you want to?
Yeah, so it's the second question here. So, I mean, what's how long do clients usually tend to stay in each destination? I guess from both you guys, what's the average length of stay?
Great question.
When they book?
Oh, so for me?
Yeah,
Sure.
both of you guys.
So our programs are structured in a way that we spend at least a month in each location. At some points, we do less than a month as well. But we've observed trends where a couple of people who have traveled with us for a month, maybe 2 months, they liked the place and they said, okay, we're just going to stay back here. And that's not with us, essentially, but that's just them staying back on their own accord. So we have had one customer who traveled with us for 9 months consecutively. But that's 9 different locations, so that's 1 month at each location. And we've had people who have traveled with us for 3 months, for 6 months at a stretch. But we haven't ourselves spent more than a month at a particular location. So we spend 1 month, one location, and then we move on to the new location. So people have spent 3, 6, and 9 months with us. But a lot of people, they stay back at a particular location when they like some place really nice. So they just stay back there as well.
And Mike, what about your
Yeah,
clients?
I've seen the same trend. So as I've mentioned, Unsettled, our core product is this month-long experience. And so that's the easy thing to say. What we see, we see a lot of people showing up in our destination, and one of the first things they do after a week or two is they cancel their flight home. They're like, I can do this, I love this destination, why do I need to leave so quickly? And I think the interesting thing that happens is they show up expecting a month, which is longer than your sort of 2-week, fun and sun vacation. But think about where you're from, how long did you live there? How do you still uncover new hidden places to go explore, where you live? They realize a month is not long enough to explore these destinations. And what I think, if you step back and look at the impact that has, that's the really interesting part, I think, when you're looking at your local economy. What happens when you spend a month, 2, 3, 4, 6 months in this destination? You're no longer just out there, going to the beaches, using the tourist vendors. You're also supporting the hardware store when your laptop breaks and you need a replacement part. You're shopping at the local supermarkets and not just the ones on the tourist streets. So it's having repercussions throughout the economies in these destinations. I think it's really interesting of how long people are staying.
All right, great. I guess the next question here is for Nishchal. So what are your thoughts on Airbnb? And do you support and do you have reservations? It's always a question.
See, that's an enormous question. So first, I'll say that Airbnb and sharing economy are 2 different things for me. I'm a big supporter of the sharing economy, and I applaud Airbnb for the pioneer in bringing that concept to us and making sure that the world knows and understands what sharing economy is and can experience that concept as well. I've seen that over the years, Airbnb has moved to a very different model. Right now, we get a lot of feedback. A bunch of that feedback is negative about how Airbnb is progressing, what their business model looks like, what their pricing strategies look like. But at the same time, I'm a big supporter of the sharing economy, because the whole concept behind sharing economy is sustainability. It's experience, it's community. It's about leveraging the resources that we already have and making sure that we don't overuse or abuse our resources, and at the same time that we gel with the local culture, we experience the sense of community at the same time. So that's what sharing economy is all about, and I'm a big supporter of that.
Okay. All right, so we'll jump to Mara's question. What can destinations do to make it more attractive for remote workers?
Okay. Oh, all right.
Oh,
This is a hard one, so I'm looking to you to start it.
Sure. So again, I know why you said the hard one, because it has to do, the answer has to come without bias to any particular destination. So I'll just say what our criteria of evaluating a particular location is. Let's start with the name. It's called the Remote Life. So that's how we start the first thing. It needs to be a location that's, it's not mainstream. So we don't look at metropolitan cities, because that's the first thing that we are trying to, in the simplest terms, escape out of. We are trying to build a different lifestyle at the Remote Life. So we look for locations that are slightly offbeat, unconventional, sort of unexplored. They provide you the kind of peace of mind that you wouldn't need. It helps you gel well with the local environment. You've got a good amount of nature around. Now, that's the thing about the destination. But what can the destination logistics look like? We definitely need a very strong office or co-working space environment. We need strong internet. So we usually go 50 to 100 Mbps of hardwired, reliable internet. We need co-working spaces that can be relied upon with electricity, with backups, with Skype meeting rooms. And at the same time, we need a local community of people who are either entrepreneurs, they are remote workers, they are digital nomads, they are travelers. Any of these combinations would work. So we are looking for a location that's remote and that can offer the logistics that we require. And logistics is essentially a really, really solid co-working workspace environment, and at the same time, a sense of community that we can interact with.
100%.
You still go ahead.
100%.
Okay. I guess we can.
Can I skip down to the question about it's illegal to work in many
Yeah,
countries?
sure.
I think it's a great controversy and does make fun questions, right? And I don't have every answer to this question. I would give a partial answer and say that most of the people we're talking about are working remotely on their laptops for their job back from their country where they live. So they're actually doing the same work as if I check my work email right now in this country, does that mean I'm working for UAE? Does that mean I need a work visa just because I'm checking my email because I'm spending 5 minutes? And I've looked into some of the laws in some countries, obviously not every country, complete gray areas in every country that I've looked at. And what I would encourage destinations to do, since we're talking about here, I said get in the room with the stakeholders, the co-working spaces, get in the room with your policymakers. Show them these trends. Is the law clear one way or the other? Can somebody show up, pop open their laptop, work for themselves, answer email, make a phone call back home? Where's that line? And that's my approach. On a very practical level, people do get tourist visas typically when they show up to these destinations, and they're living there as a tourist, but they are opening their laptops and working. So I don't have the answers here. This is a trend. I'm not controlling this. It's happening with or without us. And I think it's something that we need to be aware of. And
some professions wouldn't need it, right? If you're an author, a writer, you wouldn't need a visa. You're just traveling and writing.
And this is actually, like you said, it's a very controversial topic as well, because there's no easy answer to this. It's something that's going to require a policy change on a more global level and a lot of interaction between different nations and stakeholders as well. And I just like to point out this one initiative from Thailand. They've recently come up with a digital nomad visa program. I'm not sure of the details, but they do seem to be working towards a policy that encourages this kind of phenomena, that people who are working for organizations in different places but still want to stay and live in Thailand and work for the employers, this may be some sort of an arrangement over there. So if stakeholders, policy makers, and governments can get together and come up to a solution, then that's what we need. But it's going to be a long and tough road ahead.
Well, then we go back to talking about partnerships, right?